Okay, it's 6 o'clock. I'm going to call this meeting to order of a joint planning board economic development committee public hearing. I'm opening it for the EDC. Do you want to open it for the planning board, Charles?
Sure. I'm going to open this meeting up for the planning board. It's 6 p.m. And David, if you could take notes, please, because Emily's not here. And I'm going to recognize Mayor Wiedengardner as an honorary member of the planning board for the time being until we have a quorum here. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to read the chair's statement. This meeting is being recorded by the Economic Development Committee. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify the chairperson at this time.
Unfortunately, you also have to read the public hearing notice in its entirety. Somebody get their reading voice on.
Public reading notice. Well, that's let me keep reading what I've got in front of me.
Okay.
In accordance with MGLC 30A SS 20G, no person shall address the meeting of any public body without permission of the chair, and all persons shall, at the request of the chair, be silent. No person shall disrupt the proceedings of a meeting at a public body. If, after clear warning from the chair, a person continues to disrupt the proceedings, the chair may order the person to withdraw from the meeting, and if the person does not withdraw, the chair may authorize a constable or other officer to remove the person from the meeting. Do we have a constable here? I don't know. Mayor Wiedengardner, I was just going to proceed to the roll call. Is there some other procedural thing we're missing?
When you open up a public hearing, you have to read the public hearing notice, and it should be somewhere in your notes. And certainly,
there is stuff that I'm going to read before the public meeting.
Okay, well, but you're different. The public hearing is the public hearing. Your EDC meeting is the EDC meeting. So, I mean, I'm not trying to complicate things, but just so you know, you have to read that in its entirety. And as long as I have the floor just for a minute, the only reason I'm filling in here is not because I used to be on the planning board, but thank you for the honorary. It's because the mayor under the charter can be a member of any multiple board. So I'm filling in until to make a quorum of the planning board until the until George gets here, hopefully.
Okay, I'm gonna move ahead with the roll call for the EDC. Councillor Elmer, I'm here. Councillor Bullock, I see you. Councillor Disorder,
here.
I heard you. Yeah. Councillor Healy, I see you. And Councillor Mayo, you've been here for the whole time. Okay, thank you. You want to do the same for the planning board?
Sure. I'm Charles Roberts. I am present. David Chichester.
Here.
Okay, and I'm elevating you officially to a voting member. Mayor Wiedengardner.
Here.
Thank you. Emily Esch, George Tolumpsis, Natty Hussey, and Amy McMahon are absent at the current moment.
Okay. The EDC now is faced with the task of approving the minutes for June 14th and June 23rd. The June 14th meeting was an EDC meeting where we approved the tier 1 language, and the June 23rd meeting was the joint planning board meeting where the sign ordinance came up. Do I have a motion to accept one or both of those?
I'll make a motion to accept both of those.
Do I have a second?
Second, Disorder.
Okay, any discussion? All right, all in favor, the EDC, raise your hands.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any opposition? Okay, that's passed unanimously. Chairman Roberts, you have to do something like that?
We don't have any minutes to approve
Okay,
at this meeting.
all right. Okay, I'm going to move on to the public hearings. Correct me, Mayor, if I'm doing this wrong, but we have two. I'd like to make a statement before we get into this. We have two orders of business ahead of us related to outdoor marijuana cultivation. The first one, I believe, may be headed for the trash heap. Would it make sense, Eric, for you to explain why?
Eric's not here tonight.
Okay, all right. Well, then I'll take a crack at it. We have a well, let's just to say we don't have to waste a lot of time in the public hearing about that, I think. And then the second one has to do with the change to a tier 1 from a tier 11, and this should be non-controversial because we're doing what you asked us to do. And if you want to take a victory lap and speak on it, or if there's some opposition to it, that's what the public hearing is for. So now I'm going to read what I've got in front of me. Public hearing, 1, add section 200-7.3 to place a 1-year moratorium on all outdoor marijuana/cannabis cultivation facilities to allow the city time to study existing cultivation establishments and to undertake a planning process to consider amending the zoning ordinance regarding cultivation facilities in residential areas. This was continued from the June 23rd, 2022 public hearing. Charles, can you give me some guidance? Do we go right into that public hearing? Or do we and do the second one separately?
Well, I think it's all one public hearing, and we're considering these two initiatives. There was a desire to have the tier limitation considered first. I'm not really sure what the strategy was behind that. So
then let me keep reading the second motion. Pursuant to provisions chapter 94G section 3 of the Mass General Law, in order to impose reasonable safeguards on the operation of outdoor marijuana cultivations and to restrict the licensed cultivation, processing, and manufacture of marijuana, the city of Greenfield hereby makes the following amendments to its zoning ordinance. 1, section 200-4.2 rural residential district RC section C uses by special permit is hereby amended by adding the following section, quote, marijuana cultivation limited to tier 1, 5,000 square feet, pursuant to 200-7.17. 2, section 200-717 marijuana establishment is hereby further amended by adding at the end of section B 4 the following new language. A marijuana outdoor cultivation is limited to tier 1, 5,000 square feet per license. No person or entity having direct or indirect control shall be granted or hold more than 3 licenses in a particular class. The maximum outdoor canopy permissible under all licenses for a single parcel is 15,000 square feet. So is this, do I, help me out, Charles, do I open discussion now?
Well, I think first we can take public comment on
right, public comment, open.
We would ask people to sign in on the chat. We will take names in the order in which they appear in the chat, and I guess we would ask to limit your comments to 2 minutes. And we've heard a lot of public comment in the last. I think we've had 2 public hearings so far on these initiatives, and we've gotten lots of really helpful and valuable input. So unless people have something to add in addition to most of the information we've already heard, we would just ask people to take that into consideration. And yeah, so if you would like to speak, please sign your name in the chat.
I will add that since we have heard a lot of this, try not to repeat word for word what someone else has already said. So looking at the
Excuse
list.
me.
Yep.
Councilor Elmer and Chair Roberts, I apologize. This is George Tulumpsis of the Planning Board. I apologize for intruding. I wasn't able to get in via Zoom at 2 locations, so I've called in via the phone a number of minutes ago. I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that.
George, I can only say you are a welcome intrusion.
And if I could add, I believe Amy McMahon is going to call in as well.
Oh, great. Thank you. Oh, I see her name here. Yep.
Okay. I think
Great.
I can be over and out as a member of the planning board right now. Thanks.
You're excused.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm here as the mayor.
Thank you for filling
you.
in. Okay.
Councilor Elmer, I did notice in the chat that Dawn Morin is recording here. I don't know if you saw that or not, but.
Okay, I see it now.
Okay.
All right, looking at the chat, the first one I see is from Anna Morrison, but I believe that's actually somebody else. You want to state your name and address?
I am, yes, Mr. Chair. I am the humble husband of Anna Morrison. I'm using her iPad this evening. Thank you. So my name is Albert Norman, 21 Grinnell Street. I have 6 brief points to make. Number one, there has been some speculation about how this proposed zoning amendment would affect current applicants. I wanted to point out that the 3 corporations that have submitted have a host agreement with the city, however, have not submitted any paperwork on a special permit application because they do not have a provisional license from the Cannabis Control Commission. So they are not, in fact, in a position anytime soon, according to our information, to be an applicant to the city of Greenfield for a special permit. It could be months before that happens. I also wanted to point out, actually, this is number 3, that the city lawyer, at the request of the mayor, has put together a letter that says that the so-called 4G amendment is, in fact, legal and will apply to all outdoor growths. The reason for that, number 4, is that the amendment before you tonight, which all of you have heard and we've gotten very strong support from the city council on in their previous meeting in June, is actually more permissive than the city adopted back in 2018. This particular version does repeat the tier 1 limit, but it also adds the possibility for an applicant to have 3 licenses under state regulation at tier 1. There is no limit at all to the tier proposition today. A tier 11 is theoretically the limit, but these developers showed how they can get around that by having 3 developers put in each for a tier 11, which amounts to a tier 33 or a 300,000 square foot 7-acre canopy for cannabis, which I think really pushed people over the edge and prompted the need to re-examine the zoning code for marijuana cultivation. So we have actually proposed and I support a more expansive definition than the city adopted in I think it was March of 18 and was in effect till June of 21. I want to say also that this amendment does not disturb the use of land. It is still intact. It does not create a virtual prohibition of the use of this land, and therefore does not change the intent of the use of land, and does not provide does not create any A&R complications, as you will see in the letter from the city's attorney. So finally, I just want to say that that I am hoping, I think all the neighbors that I've spoken to are hoping that the city, the EDC tonight will vote to support this motion, send it back to the full council, as will the planning board, because I think that
your time is up.
Thank you. Thank you so
okay.
much.
All right, and Nancy and Fred MacGyver, you're next on the list. You're,
Hi, okay, thanks. I would like to reinforce the need to go back to the tier 1 designation in the city. The decision in 2021 to drop any tier designation in combination with our minimal zoning regs compared to other communities is what led to the excessive and, in my mind, outlandish proposal by the 3 out-of-state investors. Cannabis is legal industry in the state. If the city wants to make money from retail stores, that's the way to go. Indoor growing has less odor and less security issues, and also can employ more people. Outdoor growing is the most problematic, and that's what we need new zoning regs targeted for. And that's it. Thanks.
thank you. I don't see any other names. Is there anybody else who wanted to speak? Seeing none, I'm gonna close the public hearing for the EDC at 6:16.
Somebody just popped in, David Sharon.
Oh, David Sherm. David, you're on. State your name and location, and you're muted. There you go.
My name is David Sherm, 375 Barton Road, Greenfield. I want to know if there's been any thought about somebody playing the system even more by taking a plot of land, dividing it into several subplots of land, and then going about their business and in the way that these people wanted to go about their business in the first place.
Okay, we'll take that up in the discussion. Thank you. Anybody else want to speak? Seeing none, I'm going to close the discussion for the planning board at 6:17. That's close the public hearing, rather. Charles?
No, I'm gonna close the public comment period at 6:17. I guess we can close. Are we closing the public hearing as well, and then moving into deliberation?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
Okay, so let me go back and find the agenda here. Sorry for. Okay, so we have a motion for the 1-year moratorium, and let me try to summarize what the lawyer said. He said earlier that this would not have an effect on the A&R, and that's why we ended up changing the tier limitations. He also said that he didn't think it was legal, that the courts approved moratoriums when the marijuana was first legalized because it was new and had to give the towns time to get up to speed, but they've disapproved moratoriums in other towns who waited too long. So since the residents asked us not to push this, and because the lawyer doesn't like it, and actually the EDC tabled it some months ago, I'm not sure how to proceed. Charles,
we could do a couple things. I mean, it seems like we could withdraw the initiative. I believe the planning board, no, the ED, I think
the planning board wrote it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the planning board initiated the moratorium. We could consider withdrawing the proposal and then taking it off the table. I guess as both boards, we could forward no recommendation to the city council, and with the information they have at hand, decide what to do with it.
Or we could forward negative recommendations.
Or we could forward negative recommendations.
That would require a vote.
Yeah.
Um,
What do my
Charles?
members, what do my board members think about the idea of withdrawing our initiative?
Yeah, Charles, this is George. Sorry
Hi,
if
George.
I can't raise my hand.
That's good.
I would actually say there's a fourth alternative, and that alternative would be to, with due respect, not necessarily accept the legal opinion and to forward a positive recommendation about that. And I'll give my reasoning about that. When I look at the case that was cited on this is page 4 of the appendix, that the appendix A that the attorney provided. There's the bottom of page 4 running over into page 5. There's a case, W.R. Grace, that the reasoning there, we acknowledge the town has the authority to impose reasonable time limitations, at least where they're temporary. And I don't want to read all of it, but it emphasizes if it's a new use. And I want to make the case that whereas we did do a general marijuana cultivation ordinance, this outdoor grow is a relatively new use. It's also one that we didn't research well. Now, that could be said to be on us. I get that. But when we added the outdoor grow for this zone, the intention was to avoid industrial type buildings being built on farmland. And I regret that we didn't research this more with the kind of research we're talking about doing during a proposed moratorium. But I think that this is enough of a new use. It's distinct from the other uses in town for cultivation. We're still allowing Tier 11 indoor cultivation in other sections of town. So it's not as if it's a total prohibition on that. The other thing I wanted to, and I don't know if anyone has any experience with this, but on a footnote on the second page of the attorney's letter, it talks about the fact that the attorney general is required to review all bylaws in towns, but there's no such mandatory review for ordinances adopted by cities. And I wondered, is it possible, is there precedent for requesting a voluntary review by the attorney general to help protect the community? So those are my two main points about potentially going ahead with endorsing the moratorium.
Thanks, George. I guess I don't know the answer to. So you're saying that cities are not purview to review by the AG for zoning changes, but you're wondering, could we get a opinion about its legality to guide us?
Yes, from the attorney general. Yep.
Through the process.
George, are you suggesting that we put it on hold while we ask the attorney general, while we ask the attorney general for an opinion?
That could be one approach. Yes.
I'm sort of wondering what the logic is of a moratorium if we're reducing the outdoor grow cultivation to Tier 1.
Well,
thereby giving us time.
With all due respect, that decision hasn't been made yet. And I'm suggesting that a moratorium has benefit in and of itself. And I respect the legal opinion, and I'm not trying to trump it, so to speak, but I do see that, certainly it's not a slam dunk, as the attorney on the second page of the letter. If, however, a reviewing court upheld the cannabis moratorium, so it's possible it would be upheld. And I'm just saying, to protect the city, could we have a voluntary review? Again, I don't know if the Attorney General would cooperate with that, but it's not addressed in that footnote on the second page of the letter. And I think the moratorium has benefit of giving us on the planning board time to do the due diligence we should have done, I confess, before entering into any outdoor grow, because the outdoor grow is so distinct. Because as you know, one of the people commenting a little bit ago said, there's so many other factors that are contained and not a factor when you have an indoor grow. So I think it is a relatively new use for our community, and it could be argued that it's a reasonable thing to do while we engage in comprehensive planning studies, which is what that case W.R. Grace cites.
Does anybody on EDC like to comment on this before I weigh in? George, these are my thoughts. There doesn't seem to be much of an appetite for a moratorium among the concerned citizens. And there's a sequential issue that they would like to see. They've asked us repeatedly and forcefully to reduce the acreage before the moratorium, because once there's a moratorium, it gets harder to change things. And I see the logic to it. I have no problem if the planning board wants to take it up with the Attorney General to see whether a moratorium is legal. That's fine. I don't have much of an appetite for voting it, giving it a positive recommendation right now, and I can't speak for the rest of the committee. Did you guys want to do that? You want to take it to the Attorney General, or you want to withdraw it?
Well, I don't know what's involved in taking something to the Attorney General. I don't know. So it seems like there's a whole time factor involved that would probably cause us to have to withdraw and then reinitiate at some point down the road once we have an opinion from the AG, because I think the clock is ticking on this.
I don't know. I would entertain a motion to withdraw it, but Ginny and Councillor, first I see Councillor DeSorger and then I see Councillor Mayo.
I agree with Councillor Elmer. I don't have an appetite for that either, and I think it's safer right now, where we don't know how the Attorney General would rule on that. I'm not in favor of the moratorium for now. I think that the safest thing for the residents is for us to go forward with the so-called 4G amendment and not do the moratorium now. I can actually definitely see the wisdom in what Planning Board Member Tlemcen thought, but I'm not in favor of that for tonight.
Councillor Mayo?
Ginny took the words right out of my mouth. I agree with her whole entirety. That I don't think that's the way to go. I think the planning board can continue with their process. I think the EDC has overwhelming stories and from the public that says that they want us to do something now, and I agree with that. And so I'm recommending that we send a negative recommendation to the full council. Thank you.
Is that a motion?
I'll make that a motion.
Do I have a second?
Second, Healy.
Okay, well, the EDC is going to vote on this, I guess, and then the planning board can take it up.
Okay.
Any further discussion on the moratorium question from the EDC? Okay, I'm going to ask for a voice vote, I guess. All in favor of sending a negative recommendation? Is that allowed? Raise your hands.
Aye.
Okay, I see unanimous vote. So the EDC will send a negative recommendation on the moratorium.
Okay.
Planning board, you want to do
Yeah.
something?
So, I just want to hear from the rest of my members. David, do you have any thoughts?
I respect George's strategy here. I think it's wisely done, but I think there are too many chances for mishap here. Although I don't have a lot of reasoning because this is kind of new, I haven't thought it all the way through, but I think that I would prefer to see us send a negative recommendation to the city council.
Thanks, David. Amy, I see you're here. That's great. And I know you logged in a while ago, so David, please let the record recognize that Amy's in attendance for this meeting. Do you have some thoughts, Amy?
I agree that we should forward a negative recommendation based on the unlikeliness that the moratorium would hold legally. Thanks.
Yeah, so I feel that the moratorium is on shaky legal ground. I don't really understand how the moratorium and the tier reduction possibly interact with one another. So somehow advancing both seems maybe fraught with some sort of a peril. I think that the tier reduction gives the planning board time to do what the moratorium does, and with very little risk, lowering the threshold to tier 1. So, and I don't know what's better, to just send a negative recommendation or to withdraw the initiative, George, as you suggest, and then study it more and get an opinion from the Attorney General. Do you have an idea or an offering for how that process would work?
You're addressing me, Charles?
Yes, George.
Yeah, no, I don't know the process, and it looks like the process would happen once it was passed. As my reading, I don't know if anyone else is reading that footnote differently, but it looks like that's what happens when something is passed. Then the AG automatically reviews for towns any bylaw changes, but city ordinance are not so reviewed. I mean, my inclination, as I said, would be to go forward with a positive recommendation. So I'm not proposing withdrawing. So I'll defer to other. And I'm interested in hearing other planning board members, but that's my considered inclination.
All right. Well, I think we've all spoken. Is there anybody else from the planning board out there who I don't see on the list here? Emily, you're out there somewhere? No.
Sorry,
okay.
I can't see, so I didn't know. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Yeah. So does someone care to make a motion based on our most recent discussion? All right, I'll make a motion to send a negative recommendation to the city council on the moratorium.
Someone's got to second it.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I'll say I'm a no, Charles.
Okay, thanks, George. Abstentions? Yep. Okay, 3-1. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the tier 1 change. Let me get the language in front of me. Okay, so I guess I read this again. Pursuant to the provisions of Chapter 94G, Section 3 of the MGL, in order to impose reasonable safeguards on the operation of outdoor marijuana cultivations and to restrict the licensed cultivation, processing, and manufacture of marijuana, the city of Greenfield hereby makes the following amendments to its zoning ordinance. This, by the way, is a motion. One, in section 20-42 rural residential district RC section C, uses by special permit is hereby amended by adding the following new section. Quote, marijuana cultivate 22, marijuana cultivation limited to tier 1, 5,000 square feet pursuant to 200-7.17, close quote. 2, 207-17 marijuana establishment is hereby further amended by adding at the end of section B4 the following new language, quote, a marijuana outdoor cultivation is limited to tier 1, 5,000 square feet per license. No person or entity having direct or indirect control shall be granted or hold more than 3 licenses in a particular class. The maximum outdoor canopy permissible under all licenses for a single parcel is 15,000 square feet. Now, the EDC has already given this unanimous positive recommendation. So I don't actually think we need to vote on it again, but the planning board may want to. Charles?
Sure, sure. We haven't voted, so I'm going to accept your reading of the motion into the record as the for the planning board planning board's deliberation and voting. Thank you. Do we have discussion on the board for the on members of the board regarding the tier reduction? Any thoughts from folks out there?
I do, Charles, if it's okay to go ahead.
Yeah, please, George.
So I agree. I'm looking at currently anyone wants to reference it, the third page of the attorney's letter. And I agree that if this is passed, it would be, as you referenced, Charles, kind of a virtual moratorium on outdoor grow, which would allow the planning board time to do our due diligence of more in-depth research. And I think that ultimately the ideal ordinance for this use for the town would be something that incorporated not just tier size, but also setbacks and other considerations that the planning board has already listed that we want to look into. So it does seem like a virtual moratorium. Unfortunately, that leads me to the third paragraph of that page 3 of the attorneys, where the question is, would a reduction in size somehow rise to the level of a virtual prohibition? So he's leaning very heavily on the Bellows Farms case, where which was the one that I know had been cited at previous meetings. I know Councilor Elmer had mentioned at the council meeting when the number of apartment units was reduced from 435 to 203. So the amount of the use, the size of the use was altered, but the use was still allowed, and so therefore the ANR freeze did not apply. My concern is in another case that is referred to from 435 to 203 as a great reduction. Well, that was down to 47% of the original. Obviously, the tier 11, 100,000 feet, to tier 1, 5,000 feet is to 5% of what it had been. And just as an analogy, would they have thought it allowable if the 435 apartment proposal had been reduced to 22 apartments? That's 5% of 435. So my concern is that, and I know I'm going contrary to the attorney's conclusions on both of these, but he does say in one of his final sections that he's relied on any assumptions that are incorrect. So I do think that might be an incorrect assumption that a 47% reduction of size would be seen by a court as equivalent to a 5%. I mean, a reduction to 47% as compared to a reduction to 5%. So I would fear that this would put us at some legal jeopardy as a community, because it does seem to me almost like a virtual prohibition. Again, that's just my reading, analyzing this as thoroughly as I can, and trying to take responsibility from my point of view and my vote. So I just want to voice those concerns, because looking at the comparison of what the court described as a great reduction seems very different than the degree of reduction being proposed here. Thanks.
George.
Thank you, George. I think you make a good point. I guess I frame it, I see it through a different frame, that the city council made a mistake in enlarging it from tier 5 to tier 11, and it's trying to correct the mistake. We opened up a door wider than we meant to, and I guess we'll find out if we're going to get sued for doing this. But I still feel like going back to tier 1 is the simplest, most efficient way to correct the mistake that the city council made, and I believe there's a lot of support for it in the city council. So I'm encouraging a positive recommendation on this, but I want to hear from everybody else.
Yeah, thanks, Counselor. Yeah, when you sort of lay out the math like that, George, it does seem kind of like almost like a virtual moratorium, but it's not a moratorium. There's still the allowance for the use, and it is more in keeping with the original zoning that the town put forward. So tier 5 is what was allowed previously. Philip, is that what is it, Councilor Elmer? Was that the case?
It's 5,000 square feet. I believe that's tier 1.
Yeah, that's tier 1. But what I'm trying to remember what was in place before we made that change a couple years ago.
Tier 1.
Tier 1.
Yeah.
So we're allowing 3 licenses on one piece of property. So we're actually allowing more than was in the zoning originally. And when the town hires, legal opinions and legal advice for a reason to help guide us through this. And I think we're within our rights to rely on that advice that we're given, I think. So I don't have enough of a background in law to be able to understand the nuance of this, but that said, the math that you're talking about seems clear, but I don't necessarily think that locks us into having to consider this a moratorium.
I do, if I could, I do like George's instinct to make a more sophisticated and thoughtful zoning change that would include setbacks and so forth. And there's nothing to prevent the planning board or even EDC to proceed with this after, if we do approve this and send a positive recommendation to the city council. Any other comments on this? Any other discussion?
Do I have any other comments from my board members?
I do have, the mayor has asked whether she can speak. Since she was a temporary honorary member of the planning board, I think it would be churlish not to let her. So
yes, I would concur.
Go ahead, Roger.
Thank you, chairs. All I'm going to say from many years of experience is whatever you do, either tonight or when you vote on this, city council, is understand that the people that have to enforce it are the planning board. So whenever somebody decides to sue, they don't sue the city council, they sue the planning board. And I'm not, that's not a judgmental call at all. I'm fine with the conversation that you've been having tonight, and I thank you for your thoughtfulness. But just understand that as you go forward, and I think the reasoning that you've put forward, as far as I'm concerned, again, I'm not a lawyer either. I think Attorney Belcher-Timmy has given you the wherewithal to make the decision, whatever it is that you're going to make. So just understanding, though, at the end of the day, the people that are on the hook for enforcing this is the planning board, and actually at the end of the day, the ZBA, because it is a special permit.
Right.
That's it.
Thank you. Thank you,
And
Mayor.
thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion from either
Yeah.
the planning board? Yes, go ahead.
Councilor Healy. So I just want to go back to one of the citizens brought up the point of subdividing into multiple lots, right? And the definition of parcel in that amendment, right? So I just want to make sure I'm clear. If you subdivide that land, those become sub parcels, so it's still considered one parcel. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, you can A&R a land, you can A&R a piece of property. But I'm not sure if you could take a piece of property and A&R it, infinitely into smaller and smaller parcels.
If you had the frontage, though, right, you could potentially make 10 parcels out of it if you had the right frontage.
Well, so there's A&Ring property lots that aren't building lots. Those aren't required to have frontage. Like when neighbors swap a piece of property back and forth, they're not necessarily creating a building lot. They're buying like a sliver of land to build a swimming pool or something. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
I just want to make sure if we're gonna vote on this and pass it, that their lawyers don't tear it apart and say, hey, this is just, hey, there are multiple parcels, right? Because you know how lawyers are, they'll find that one loophole and they'll run with it. So whatever we do, we want to make sure the language is there, because I'd hate to see this thing.
Well, what we're saying is that you can only have 3 licenses on a parcel.
On a parcel, right? Define parcel. If you divide it into 10 parcels, are those 10 parcels? And then you could have 3 licenses per parcel. And my next question rolls into.
Go ahead, finish, Councilor Healy. I didn't mean to cut you off.
My next question rolls into, I don't know enough about marijuana licenses to make this call, but I know in Greenfield you have liquor licenses, which there's only so many per city. Are there only so many tier 1 licenses in Greenfield, or is it unrestricted?
Go ahead, Jenny. Jenny might have the answers.
I believe that we have 8 retail licenses. I don't have that in front of me, but I don't think that we have. I'd have to go through. Maybe Charles knows that.
No.
I have a couple of other comments, but if you know the answer to that, by all
I
means.
don't know the answer, but I'm suspecting that maybe the mayor does.
I think Councilor DeSorger is correct that, well, she's right. We have 8 liquor licenses. These are different. So no, there's nothing. They have each entity, if I understand this one correctly, has or will have at some point a license to grow marijuana. To your point, Councilor Healy, what you're, and the person who brought it up before, what you're talking about is subdivisions, and that's a whole different aspect of zoning bylaw, and it doesn't apply. I'm going to say that advisedly, just based on experience. It applies to housing. It does not apply to this. Now, there's always the opportunity to create new law, but that is not what governs marijuana bylaw, marijuana ordinances or marijuana licenses. So it's certainly a cautionary thing to think about, but I don't think we should derail the process that we're going through tonight, which I think is a good process, and that is one to do the tier licenses and change that. So I appreciate what you're looking for, and that is truly a good question for another day. But I don't think anyone here has the ability to answer that.
So I agree wholeheartedly. So I agree with passing, going forward with this. I just want to make sure we're thinking about down the road when, when this does go through, what their next game strategy is, because they're not going to give up. They're not going to give up. They're going to fight it somehow, some way.
Councilor Disorder, you had more things to say.
Yes, Councilor Healy raised very valid points that had occurred to me, but I think this is the thing that we need to do for right now. And I also think we've read a lot of legal opinions since getting on city council, and there's always something at the end of the legal opinion that's sort of a qualifier, as you would call it. And so taking that into account, there's always something at the end of every legal opinion. It's like, with the amount of information that I have, this is going to be fine, or, with things that are current. So that doesn't dissuade me from doing this. I am endorsing passing this.
Any further discussion? Either committee?
Charles, thank you, Councilor. Charles, I just wanted to defer to Andy, the other planning board member, before I speak again. But
yeah, David or Amy, do you have more to weigh in on here, or should George have his moment?
I think George should have his moment.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay, George.
okay, thank you. I first wanted to just make a comment that Councilor Elmer was speaking about trying to correct something that was an overstep by going from the tier 1 to the tier 11 in these kind of situations, and I just wanted to, obviously it's the council's decision about that, but I did want to acknowledge that we on the planning board recommended that. And as I said earlier, I thought in retrospect, we should have done more due diligence, which we're trying to catch up on now, particularly with regard to outdoor grow. At the time, our focus was trying to avoid large commercial type buildings being plunked down in farmland that would have been allowed at that point in the RC. And I want to say that from the point of view of the justifiability of this action, that we are retaining the tier 11 in other parts of town. And so that would add to my feeling a little discomforted about this sudden dramatic reduction otherwise. I certainly get the reasoning behind it, and I certainly would want to provide protection against this, misapplication. I think every one of us feels of the intent of the ordinance change, which was imperfect without that overreach. But I'm reading, and I appreciate Councilor Desorga's point about that. It's kind of boilerplate about, at the end of a legal opinion about, any flexibility about interpretation or how you see to interpret this. But I'm also reading that the attorney stated that as far as whether this was a virtual prohibition, this analysis would likely be extremely fact-based. And the facts I'm looking at with the math I've done is that if they're calling reducing something to just under half the size, to 47% of the size of that apartment complex in the Bellows Falls case, and that is called a great reduction. I can't imagine what adjective they would use for something that's going to 5%. And I can't imagine they would have supported it if they were saying you can have 22 apartments, not 435. So that is, again, using the wisdom and experience of the attorney is influencing my where I'm coming down on this, because I think, having something more in the middle, like tier 4 of 20 to 30,000, or tier 3, 10 to 20,000, it just seems like it's so extreme. It's less defensible, though I'm in favor of the outcome of protecting this particular neighborhood from this egregious, proposal. So I'll leave it at that. I don't want to repeat myself. Thank you,
George. Well, so the EDC has voted to forward a positive recommendation, so it's in the planning board's lap right now. And is there somebody who would care to make a motion on the planning board one way or the other? David?
Yeah, I recommend that we forward a positive recommendation to the city council.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion?
Who seconded that?
Amy did.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of sending a positive recommendation on the tier 1 limitation of the city council?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No, thank you, Charles.
Abstentions?
I'll vote no.
Okay, that passes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me scroll back. We had parking and bike lane on Main Street on the list of possible discussions. We're not going to get to it tonight. Is there any new business? Seeing none. Any old business? Hearing none. The next meeting of the EDC is scheduled for August 9th, 2022 at 6 p.m. via Zoom unless otherwise posted. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'd make that motion, Mayo.
Do I have a second?
Second, DeSorger.
Okay. I don't think we discussed those, do we?
I need a motion to adjourn for the planning board too, actually, once you're done.
Okay.
Let them vote.
All in favor of, on the EDC side of adjourning, raise your hand, please. I can see you all. Yes, excellent, unanimous. Okay, Charles, it's all yours.
Okay, motion to adjourn for the planning board.
I move.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you all, and thank you all the citizens who showed up. You did good work. I think you got what you wanted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone. I appreciate it.